Hello, my name is John Elmes and I'm a reporter at Times Higher Education. I'm joined today by Francis Campbell, the vice-chancellor of St Mary's University, Twickenham. Francis, thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
Right, as vice-chancellor, I mean, your job will be considerably busy, and in these uncertain times, perhaps even busier. In terms of how St Mary's is going on, I've brought you in to talk to you about your 10-year plan. I just wanted to ask you to give a bit of background about that and how you see St Mary's going forward.
Well, we're about to launch a new 10-year strategy going up to the end of 2025, beginning of 2026. We've been working on it for about 18 months. It's designed to ensure that we are able and ready for growth in a whole number of areas. We are only 2 years a university, so it's the first corporate plan of the university. So it's involved a comprehensive relook at everything that we do. And we're not doing it in isolation because the rest of the higher education sector is changing at the same time with some huge shifts. But it's designed to try to position the university actually amidst all of that change, but by 2025 to actually know, research, international, the education strategy, what our profile is, and actually that we are positioned in the right place to be able to take advantage of some of the changes.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, you gained university status in 2014. What is it like for a newer institution in these times of great flux to be going on? Does it propose an opportunity or more challenges than opportunities? I would presume the former.
Well, if challenges and opportunities, but if the challenges weren't there, then certainly I wouldn't be there. So actually it's the challenges attract people. Yeah. It's an exciting time. We are a new university, but at the same time we're an institution that was founded in 1850. So we have, huge foundations going in to teacher education, huge foundations going into sport. But now the opportunity is actually to move from first teacher training college, then a university college, and then to be a university. And what does that mean? And what does it mean for your research strategy? So by 2020, we have a plan to get research degree awarding powers. What does it mean for the position of St Mary's in relation to the Research Excellence Framework? What happens in relation to the Teaching Excellence Framework? What's the level of sustainable ambition? And where does St Mary's want to be in the next 10 years? Absolutely. And to start that conversation, not only within the institution with students and staff, but to reach out locally, nationally and internationally. And our roots are international. We were founded 1850 by 6 French brothers. We were run by the Irish for about 100 years. Some people might say, with my accent, we still are. So we've always had this, quite strong national and international dimension. And in this changing higher education environment, we can't be complacent about that. So we've got a very, ambitious international strategy. We wish to have 25% of our students coming from outside the UK by 2025, and a similar proportion coming from postgraduate.
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, they're quite substantial plans and, big targets you've got there. And you mentioned it's the history of St Mary's. Now, St Mary's is one of the few faith institutions in the UK in higher education. In terms of continuing with a sector that, by and large, is fairly agnostic, how does that work in terms of your day-to-day? Is it different in any way? What is the place of a faith-based institution in higher education?
Well, I believe there's a very good place for a faith-based education, but there are distinctions to be made because people sometimes ask, what does that mean? And so we say we are a university with a religious identity. We're not a religious university. And there is a huge amount of difference between those two phrases. We are first and foremost a university. We have an identity that is religious, and that identity is not simply a historical footnote, it's there. But the key question for a university that's coming out of a faith tradition is, how is it distinctive? So you can say what you are, but then the crucial question is how. And when you're dealing with a university, a faith-based university like St Mary's, where the vast majority of the staff and students will be coming from another faith or no faith, then the question is even more important of how. So we give that tangible expression in a number of ways. Academically, it's around, realising John Henry Newman's vision of a university and that interdisciplinary conversation. But it's also about how we run the operation. So we don't outsource functions. Now, sometimes HEFCE asks us questions about your staffing costs are very high. And we say, well, they are no higher when you take in non-staffing costs at other institutions, because other institutions outsource key roles that we don't. So it looks as if our staffing costs, but when you round it up, we have catering, security, cleaners, all of these things are internal to us. The only outsourced function we have is the career service, and that's provided to us by the University of London. In addition to that, we pay the London living wage, and we put a premium on community. So we try to ensure that we are faithful to the founding principle of Catholic Poor Schools Committee. So our accommodation is one of the most affordable in the whole of the UK. And that's not easy to achieve when you're sitting inside the M25 in London. So it's things like that. It's a mixture of the tangible and the pedagogy that you will try, but the how is always a work in progress. And I think there's, in our strategy that we're about to launch, there is an indication of more work that we will be doing on that, about how do you actually realise Newman's idea of a university, but in the 21st century.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, faith-based institutions are quite common in the US, another global higher education superpower, and they seem to sustain themselves quite well. In terms of St Mary's position in higher education, you mentioned that you want to make it quite an international university, and being in London, that would make sense given London's draw to overseas people. Now, obviously, the rhetoric recently and with the recent referendum, international students and net migration figures are massively on the agenda, and current news is that the government might have misrepresented the amount of students breaking their visa rules. In terms of the rhetoric around international students, how damaging is or are the common political parties' words regarding international students?
Well, I come at this from a number of angles. I worked in a previous incarnation in Pakistan, which is a huge market for British higher education. And I'm very conscious of how valued the UK's higher education sector is abroad, in South Asia in particular. I will be waiting to see what the details are that emerge in relation to how students are dealt with in the UK vis-à-vis the immigration targets and how open we are. And I would hope that we retain quite a high degree of openness for one primary reason, and that is I myself had the opportunity through scholarships to just open up my own personal horizon at key stages in my university development. I got the opportunity to go to Belgium, I got the opportunity to go to Poland, and a scholarship to the United States. And just how that transforms you as a human being and your perspective is something that I would wish for the students that are coming through St Mary's and other institutions, so that the internationalisation debate at the moment has always been about students coming into the UK. It is equally about our students leaving the UK and actually broadening that perspective and openness to different cultures. So I'll wait to see what the details say. And then finally, I would say in particular with regards to St Mary's, we are, a UK public university that has a faith identity. But we're also one of 2,000 Catholic universities and colleges in the world. And that universal dimension has been there from our very foundation. And you look at the staff and students in St Mary's, you look at our international collaborations, and there's a tremendous witness to that. So we would be looking as well to ensure that that dimension is very much part of our future, not just our past.
Absolutely. And obviously, international students is one of many, issues surrounding the Brexit vote. And in terms of a day-to-day running of a university, how do you kind of try and encapsulate and encompass all these problems and deal with them on a day-to-day basis whilst starting off with a new 10-year plan and being a new university?
Well, you do it, John, because I have a wonderful set of colleagues. It's a wonderful staff, a wonderful student. It's compared to the size of British universities, it's relatively small, so it's a community of around 7,000. And there is just a tremendous amount of goodwill and a tremendous amount of collegiality. If you were trying to do it yourself, you would fail. But when you have, the level of expertise in a team and the level of goodwill on the part of staff, then actually an institution like St Mary's is able to sort of, take advantage of some of the opportunities and also to ride some of the challenges that come from time to time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the UK's position in global higher education, as you mentioned, you've had the benefit as a student to enjoy universities all over the world, and in your former profession as a diplomat, you will have been visiting many other countries. In terms of where UK higher education sits at the moment and going forward, despite there not being, as you say, the detail, where are we, and where do you think we should be, and where can we be?
I think at the moment we're in really an excellent place as regards the standing and the quality of UK higher education, and I saw that in so many places, from South Asia to North America, and the goodwill as a diplomat that you get and the return to UK PLC from people who have come to the UK to be trained, and the goodwill that they continuously have back to the country. So as a diplomat, I saw that day in and day out, whether it is in the European Union, whether it was in the United Nations, or whether it was in Pakistan. So people have memories here, and the brand and the quality of UK education is amongst the best in the world. In terms of going forward, I think whether you're an individual institution or whether you are the collective or whether we're the broader society, I think, there's a real opportunity with some of the legislative changes that are taking place in relation to the bill to make sure that actually we continue to be ahead of that curve, and that we are not complacent about actually, what's going on in other societies, whether it be Australia or Canada or the United States, that the UK remains very much either the principal or one of the principal players in global higher education.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now, as a vice-chancellor, there are many often debates about who is best to run a university. Now, you've had a career as a diplomat, but you've also had a career as an academic. So, in some ways, people would say you've got good perspectives from either side. What does it take to run a university? What does it take to be a vice-chancellor?
A good dose of humility. I think there are parallels. There are many parallels. And I think one of the things is actually trying to be more collegial, trying to build a team, trying to get people who, are not a reinvention of you, but are different, or to try to build a team that's actually better than you. And I think what we've been trying to do over the last 2 years at St Mary's is to get a really interdependent, collegiate team that actually will run the place and take, different initiatives forward. It's a small enough operation to be able to do that. But actually, I think for my experience on the basis of 2 years is to put the emphasis on teamwork rather than you as an individual basically saying, I will achieve X, Y, and Z, because the chances are on your own you won't. But with a really good team, with a shared mission and a shared purpose, you can achieve much, much more.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a very fantastic place to end. Thank you very much, Francis. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you.